In this video, we are going to take a look at clipping masks. Now, a clipping mask works similar to a mask in the fact that it's going to hide or show information, but instead of it being an actual mask in one of these layers, it sits outside as a separate layer, and instead of using a black to white scale, it uses information that's either there or not there, so either opaque or transparent, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. So if you're following along, we have the woman.psd file, and you will see that we have three layers here. We have the background layer, so if I turn off these other two layers, you'll see we just have a plain white background and nothing behind that. Then we have a woman layer sitting on top, and then we have a lipstick layer. Now that's currently hidden, and we're going to take a look at this in just one moment, but for the time being, go ahead and unhide that layer and then just pretend that it's not there until we get to it because it doesn't pertain to this first section. So we have these two layers, and let's imagine that I wanted to cut out maybe her face. Maybe it's a profile image for like a website, or you're doing something with a magazine and you want to cut away a piece of this image and show a different background. We can do that with a clipping mask. So to create the clipping mask, we have to first make it on a new layer, and it will show where the woman is going to be clipped. So this will make a little more sense in just a moment, but for now, just go ahead and click on the background layer and then add a new layer. So you'll see it says layer 1, and we can rename this. Okay, so we'll just call that clipping mask. And now what we want to do is we want to draw where we want the information to be clipped, where it's going to clip this woman into. I'm going to go to the top, and I'm going to select the elliptical marquee tool. And with that layer selected, we'll go ahead and draw a selection. And now we just want to fill this in with any information. It doesn't matter if it's black, white, or any colors. I usually just use black because I'm used to using that, or you could use white to pertain to the actual ways masks work. But it can be any information, and we will just go ahead and hide the woman layer now so we can see this. So I'm still on the clipping mask layer. I'm going to go to Edit, Fill, and we'll do black, and it'll fill that layer in. I'll hit Control D to deselect, and we'll bring that woman in. Now, if you look over in the layers, you will see that what is going to happen is the top layer, the woman, is going to clip down into our clipping mask like a normal mask and reveal the background layer wherever there's no information on that clipping mask, so where that transparent information is. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and click on that woman layer. If I hold down the Alt or Option key and I go between the two layers, you're going to see a little square with a down arrow. And that says that we're going to clip the woman down into the clipping mask and everything below that. So as you begin creating these, you'll find out you're going to want to group these together so that you're not clipping extra things. But basically, we're going to hold down the Alt or Option key and then click, and you will see what happens. It has now moved that woman down into that clipping mask, and we can see the white background behind it. So we can turn off and on the background, and we can give any background that we want. This could be a website, magazine, article, or any other image or gradient or anything like that that you would like to have. So we have the background, we have the woman being clipped into that mask, and you can see that the woman layer has changed. There's now a little arrow pointing down into that clipping mask to show you that that is what's happening. Now, the great thing about this is that we can move around these images. Either we can move the woman around, or we can move that circle around independently. So I'm going to select the Move tool, and in the options, if you have Auto Select turned on, go ahead and turn that off so that we're working on a per layer basis. When you go to the clipping mask and then you try to move it, if you have Auto Select on, it will try to move the picture behind it also. We don't want that. We want to move the layer that we're working on. So right now we're on the woman layer, and I can click and I can move her inside of that. So basically I'm just moving the layer around, but the clipping mask is staying still, so you can see, and I can get her positioned up wherever she needs to be. Or I can click on the clipping mask and I can move the circle around. So now if you imagine it's a black circle with transparent information, and wherever that circle has information, we're able to see her, and then wherever there isn't information, we're seeing the background. So now we can get this lined up right where we want it to be and make it look good and so forth. Now you can also add or subtract to this clipping mask by adding in information. So if I grab my paintbrush and I have black selected, I can go ahead and start painting into this mask. Now, if I select a different color, like say I select white and I paint, it's also going to add. So this is where it's different than a normal layer mask. The clipping mask is either information or not information, not on a black and white scale. So we can come in here, we can use our brushes and we can paint this out. We can do selections and we can do any number of things to make this look good. Now, to get rid of that, we would have to erase it because we want transparent information. So I'd have to grab my eraser tool and then start erasing out that information. And if we hide the layers, you can see what I just drew and what I erased, and that woman is clipping down into that information. So let's go ahead and undo some of that till we're back to where we want to be. And what happens is this gives us a lot of different options to actually use inside of Photoshop to create these masks. You can do all kinds of really cool things, such as using your brushes, using shapes, using gradients, and so forth. So let's go ahead and select the clipping mask. I'm going to hit Control-A and hit Delete. And it's going to erase all the information in there. And basically what we can do is we can recreate the clipping mask however we want. So we can select a gradient, and we can't do black to white because it'll just fill that way. We need to actually make one of these transparent. So let's turn this all the way down. We'll hit OK. And then let's go ahead and make sure we have the first gradient selected. And then what I can do is I can do this cool gradient effect where I'll just move the gradient across. And now you can see how that's affected the image here, and we can change that out if we need to. So we can do a bunch of really cool things. If I turn off the woman there, you can see that clipping mask, what it looks like. And if I turn off the background, you can see the transparent information of that clipping mask. So though it looks white, it's just because I have a white background on. But if I turn that off, it's actually nothing there on that clipping mask. So let's go ahead and select all and delete that out. And then you can also use shapes. So I can select one of these shapes and I can draw on the clipping mask, and it'll do all the normal shape things that we could use with this, but it gives us the ability to adjust shapes. I can move this around, so I can make the path selection tool here and move the shape around. And I can also grab any of the points that I want, which opens up a lot of doors. That means we can use fonts in here, we can use shapes, we can use glyphs, all kinds of different ways to make these clipping masks. Okay, and make sure clipping mask is selected, and then we'll go back and we'll do a custom shape tool, so you can pick any of these shapes. So we'll just do this, we'll do this splat here, and we'll just click out and change the dimensions. We'll hit OK, and then now it's created that shape for us. So here's another clipping mask that we can move around, and as we move the shape, or we scale it, or do any of the things that we would like to do with this shape, you can see how it's affecting this. Let's go ahead and save that, but let's turn off the stroke so it doesn't have a stroke. And then we'll hit the move tool, and then you can see how it's made that clipping mask. And we'll just hide the woman and hide the background, and then you can see the shape that we've created. So as long as you are making any information on that layer, it's going to affect that layer and allow you to do a clipping mask. And again, to do it, you just hold Alt. If you go over the two layers and you hold Alt again, you can undo the clipping mask. So if I hold Alt and click, it will undo it, and then I can redo it again if I need to. So it works like a mask, but it gives us a lot more options and more control that we can use. And then, like I said, later on, you may want to link or group these together so that you can move them and work on them independently. So let's go ahead and take a look at the other thing I wanted to show you with the lipstick. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this clipping mask layer now, and we'll bring in the lipstick. And sometimes another way that you'll need to clip layers is when you are using adjustments. So let's say that we are doing some type of promotional advertisements, and we're promoting this lipstick, and we've got this nice bottle here with the lipstick in it. It looks good, but we don't believe the colors really match up. This looks like it's a little more reddish, almost magenta in it, and we want to be more that dark red color. And we want to make an adjustment to this layer here. So we can go down to the adjustment layers and click on that and go to hue and saturation. And then we can start making our color adjustments. So we'll click on colorize. And as soon as I do that, you see immediately what happens is it's affecting all the layers beneath it. And that is a problem because we don't want to affect this layer with the woman. We just want to affect the layer with the lipstick. And the way that we do that is the same way. We just use a clipping mask with that hue and saturation. And when I hold Alt, you'll see that that same box is there with a down arrow. And then I click. And now what's happening is it's clipping that hue and saturation just to the lipstick layer. So as I move this around, you can see that it's only affecting that layer, not all the layers beneath it. So adjustment layers will affect everything beneath it unless you use a clipping mask on the layer that's immediately below it. And then we can go ahead and we can affect this. It has a mask layer on it, so we don't want to affect the bottle either. And now we can use a normal mask to just cut out the piece that we want. So let me grab a selection tool and I'll grab the bottle here. And this isn't going to be perfect, but just to show you. And then let's go ahead and fill that in with black. And I have the mask selected on the hue and saturation. We'll fill it with black. And now it gets rid of all that information. So we've actually, if you look down in the layers, you can see that black square is removing the information from there, but it's keeping the lipstick still there. So now if I go back and click on the hue and saturation adjustments, I can go ahead and make my adjustments and find out the exact color. Now, of course, I'd go in and spend some time and try to make this look really good. But basically, we can go in and make any adjustments we want. And a couple of things is happening here. We have a hue and saturation adjustment layer that's changing the colors. That layer has its own mask where we've masked out just the lipstick that we need and we've gotten rid of the bottle. And then that hue and saturation is only affecting that bottom layer. So it's only affecting this layer. It's not affecting the woman beneath it. And that's the main thing I wanted to show you is this probably isn't the best example because you can go about creating this effect a couple of different ways, but it just shows you that you use clipping masks to affect the layer directly beneath it. If I undo that, you'll see that she turns that color and then our mask comes back on. We have all kinds of problems. But the clipping mask will allow you to make layer adjustments directly to the layer beneath it. So that is clipping masks. I hope you enjoyed. I hope that makes some sense to you. You can also check out Adobe's documentation if you want to learn more about them. But that is how clipping masks work, and I hope you can use them in your designs.